This is the Marketing Podcast Network.
Stories influence, teach, and inspire us. But what about the storytellers who create them? Uncorking a Story profiles storytellers to uncover how their background and life experiences influence the stories they create. We learn what motivates them, their path to success, and what fuels them to keep creating. It all starts by asking one simple question: where does your story begin? Welcome to Uncorking a Story. Now here's your host, Mike Carlin.
Well, hello, and welcome to Uncorking a Story. I'm your host, Mike Carlin, and today I'm excited to introduce you to Suzanne Yatim Aslam. Suzanne is a former actress in Miss Arab USA. I was so paranoid I was going to screw that up. Turned writer. Her personal experience with postpartum depression and anxiety left her feeling alone and confused. In her book, Postpartum Me, she addresses the dark thoughts that so many mothers have, but are too scared to say out loud. She's thrilled to get this book into the hands of mothers who may be struggling with postpartum depression and anxiety. And here today to talk about her life and her book is Suzanne. Welcome to Uncorking a Story, Suzanne.
Thank you, Mike. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you here. First of all, what's in that cup?
Iced coffee, but I pretend it's hot because I love coffee cups.
I only have water, so I wish I had something with some caffeine in it this time of day. But before I go on about myself, let me ask you the question I ask everybody to begin, which is, Suzanne, where does your story as an author begin?
Nobody's ever asked me that before, so that's fun. It was 2019, and my husband and I and our kids were trying to get out of the heat. So we went to Seattle. We live in Phoenix. We went to Seattle, and we're staying in this cute little house in this cute, quaint little neighborhood. And I was trying to think of where my life goes from here. I had just come out of postpartum depression and anxiety, and I was sort of settling down. And as I settled down and sort of reevaluated what life is like now, I got kind of angry because I really struggled, and I didn't feel like I had a safe place to express those struggles, because everybody's postpartum can be different, but mine was like, oh, Sammy ruined my life. His existence made my life difficult. And I was so cool before, and now I'm not. And now I'm just some loser mom. And you have these horrible thoughts that aren't true, but they feel very, very real. And so anytime I try to express it, it's such an ugly thing to say. So when somebody hears you say that, people are like, they don't know how to respond.
Yeah.
So it made me feel like a bad person. I felt like a monster. I felt like a terrible mother, all those things. So I stopped talking about it. And so when I'd come out of it around 2019, I was really angry that I had these very real feelings, and I didn't have an acceptable and appropriate place to put them. So I was kind of reevaluating my life, and I had read a book by Hal Elrod called The Miracle Morning. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not.
It's a really good book, very quick read, just about like how setting your mornings up for success helps you set your life up for success. And then we started talking, my husband and I, about visualization. And so if you can see like, okay, what do I want my life to look like moving forward? If I had my dream, what is that? And how does that look? And so with those two ideas of like, okay, where does my life go from here after the children, and now that I'm better and I can do anything I want, what does that look like? So I started writing stories, because that's how I process things. And what I love to do, if something happened in my life that didn't end well, I'll write it down and I'll change the ending. And it's just sort of therapeutic.
Yeah.
So I started writing, and then I realized through my visualizations that I actually wanted this to be real, that I wasn't doing it just for me, but I wanted to put it in the hands of moms who maybe felt the same way I did, but felt like they couldn't say it out loud. So it was very therapeutic for me, but the goal was to not let them feel like they were bad.
When you were going through postpartum depression, did you recognize it as such, or did you just feel off?
No, I didn't recognize it. I had never been depressed before, so it didn't occur to me, why would I be depressed now suddenly out of the blue? But the problem is correlation was causation. So the same time I became a mom was the same time I got depressed. So for me, I was like, oh, this is how it feels to be a mom. So being a mom is bad. This is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I didn't recognize it. And I had spent months and months and months just being really, really upset and miserable and depressed, having no idea that there was actually a deeper rooted issue.
Yeah, I asked that because we are the parents of triplets. They are 20 years old now, but when they were babies, my wife, and she says this now. She's like, "Well, I think I was depressed." She
Mm,
had always struggled with some form of anxiety, ever since she was a kid. But and I realized I probably shouldn't be sharing this without her here, but this is what she shared with me. But she didn't like characterize it as such. Like she didn't know. It was only like looking back years later. She's like, my goodness, I was depressed like when the kids were babies. Um,
right.
and looking back like rearview mirror, I'm like, I it's hard to disagree with that because of just how she was behaving at that time. And she was definitely her personality was quite different than it was, prior to becoming a mother.
Yeah, my husband says the same thing. I could tell he would be looking at me trying to find me, and I just wasn't there. I was a very different person. And that's a really hard thing to reconcile.
Yeah.
It messes up your marriage because suddenly you're not dealing with a person who can speak logically or can explain themselves, or you don't understand what's going on, and there's just tension there, plus the tension of just being tired and sleep deprived, as you very well understand.
Yeah, the sleep deprivation, because that's what we would think, because we didn't sleep. I mean, the kids were born. So to put it in context, our kids were born 9 weeks early. They were,
Oh,
they were
God.
31 weekers. The biggest one is 3 pounds 10 ounces. My son, who was the smallest, was 2 pounds 10 ounces. And they didn't. I could say this now because they're adorable. They're all very good looking and well adjusted kids, but they look like lizards. I mean, they didn't look like human beings. It was
Yeah, weren't done cooking, were they?
no. So you think, oh, okay, is it the sleep deprivation? Is it the fear? Is it the anxiety of something's going to happen? What if they don't develop the way they're supposed to? So there's all these like big questions, and the elephant in the room was that there's maybe something chemical going on here. Um,
Mhm.
but how did you like in those earlier days? I mean, you mentioned sort of writing, visualization, but how did you and your husband deal with it?
While I was depressed?
Yeah.
Oh, at first it was really hard because we didn't know what was happening. So I'm just this, I feel like a crazy person who's just spiraling. And my husband didn't know how to help me because he didn't know there was a problem. He just thought like, oh, she is not adjusting well to motherhood. So he used to keep an eye on me, and he worked. I mean, like I could walk to his office, but sometimes he'd work from home in our tiny little condo. He would find a place to work and he'd be like, "Oh, I have a light day, so I'm just going to work from home and hang out with you and the baby." But really he was keeping an eye on me. I found out later because he was genuinely worried about, is she going to hurt herself? Is she going to hurt the baby? I don't know. And I'm just too scared to risk that. So it was really weird because he couldn't say any of that to me. So he just had to watch me. Um and we there was a lot of tension between the two of us because I was so irritable and I would just get really angry. And then he's busy and he's an entrepreneur and he's running his own company and he's not home when I need him to be home, and I'd get really angry. And the disparity of like the labor distribution of the child at the time was it was just so like, he wasn't home, and I didn't know how to deal with that because you're supposed to be this person who just like, you're a woman, you're a goddess, you just know what to do. And then I didn't know what to do. And I struggled so hard with feeling like I'm supposed to understand my child. I'm supposed to feel like I got this. I'm supposed to know how to nurse him. And I don't know how to do any of these things. And I have no help. So I felt really, really alone, even when he was there. And I never said any of this out loud. I
And
just sort of
I
silence.
guess I imagine then those like feelings of guilt must like compound on you because you're taught to believe like I just think about like pop culture, right? You become a mother, these are the happiest days of your life. You should be happy with your baby. Everyone knows what to do. Um,
Mhm.
and then when you realize that, okay, well, that's not true. It's not true for me. There must be some feelings of guilt there.
It was like straight up anger at first because I felt like everybody had lied to me. Like, and all of the talks about like, oh, your body just knows what to do and you're just like female instincts and all that shit. And then like, sorry, am I not, should
No,
I
no,
cuss?
that's fine. That's fine. We can say shit, damn, fuck, whatever you want. I mean, this is
Woo!
this is your show.
Um, okay, good. I appreciate that. So I'm dealing with all that. And I just am so angry because I'm like, dude, like everybody talked about, here's how to take care of the baby when he's inside of you. And here's how to push the baby out. But then you bring him home and like, they're just like, okay, like here, deal with it. And I didn't know how to deal with it. And it was things as basic. This is what got me so angry. I remember, my midwife, she was like, okay, it was time to push. And she's like, okay, bear down. And I didn't know what that meant. I had never heard that phrase before in my life. And so I didn't know what that meant. And then I didn't know how to push. Like I tried to push, but it didn't feel like she had to tell me when to push. And I remember being really upset because you hear these crazy stories about like a woman gave birth in the car because she couldn't help it. And she had to push. And I'm like, well, why is my body failing me? Like I can't do the one biological function I was supposedly born to do, which is push out a fucking baby. And so I remember just like being really angry at this whole narrative that has been shoved down my throat my whole life about how women just know things. And then I didn't know the things. And so I felt incomplete. I felt like I wasn't a full bona fide woman or a full bona fide mother. And that really messes with your head. So it was anger more so than anything. The guilt for me came with having negative feelings and then knowing I shouldn't feel that way. So it was like, oh, I feel guilty because Sammy didn't ask for this. And here I am mad at him. And then also feeling guilty because I have a really good life and I felt very ungrateful. I live in a resort town. You saw out my window. It's very nice. I live in a resort town. My parents are immigrants and life was really hard for them. And I have everything. And so I'm like, why am I complaining? Like, stop being a baby, is how I was interpreting it. Cause I didn't know I was depressed. So I thought I was just being, an ungrateful and a baby and I couldn't handle the hard things. And so I was fighting with myself constantly about how I was feeling.
Yeah. So when did you feel things turn around for you?
After I had my second baby, Ronan, they're 2 years apart. And after I had Ronan, maybe like 5 months later, we sent Sammy to school for like 3 half days. And then Ronan would nap before we picked Sammy up from school. So there were like 2 hours in the middle of the day where I didn't have any children with me. And enough time had gone by. I mean, this isn't healthy that, this much time went by. At this point, we're like 2.5 years in. But enough time had gone by that like I was sort of settling down and sort of getting used to things. And then I'd have a 2-hour break in the middle of the day. And Mike, that for me was huge. It wasn't like the kids are at bed and now it's 10 p.m. and I can wind down. No, I got to recharge in the middle of the day. And I remember like, I had my last panic attack sometime after we started sending Sammy to school. And then I was done. And I really think it's because I had time to myself and I used the time wisely. I didn't always, but now I was like, I need to fix this, so I'm going to do the things that make me happy, even if that means I don't shower or the dishes aren't done or whatever, but I'm going to sit and read and drink my coffee because that's my happy place and fuck everything else. And I was able to recharge. So the second half of the day I could function again.
Yeah, it's like learning like a little self-care behavior or something, it sounds like. Okay. So tell me about sort of the motivation behind writing this book and kind of when you started writing it and why.
So I started writing it in 2019 when I started, doing those visualizations about what I want my life to look like. And it was kind of the idea, Mike, that my life can look like however I want it to look like. So I had done a very terrible thing and I had judged all moms that came before me. And I had this very specific idea of what a mom looked like and how she acted. And I didn't fall into that. So then I judged myself and judged them. And so this book was more about like, look, you're going to just do it however you are going to do it. And however is best for you is what's best for your baby. So I wrote the book in the form of journal entries. So it's my story. It's a memoir and it's in the form of journal entries because the point is I couldn't say these dark thoughts out loud. So I wrote my journal entries. I love writing. I used to be an actor and I love stories so much. So even though all of the stories are real, the dialogue is something that I just created while I was writing it. And it was so fun for me to create those. But then I just got to be really, really raw and really, really honest and say all the bad things. And sometimes it's the good things, which was kind of the fun part about the idea is because when you're depressed, you're not in a constant perpetual state of sadness. right? Like sometimes you'll have bad moments and good moments and ups and downs, just like everybody. So sometimes Sammy would do something cute and I'd love it. And so I'd write that down in my journal, in the fake journal for the book. Because that's what it's like. It's just a lot of back and forth. And then the next day I'm like, I hate this. I wish I never became a mom. I need this to be a dream. This can't be real. Please wake me up from this dream. So there's just like, so you kind of feel the spiral, you feel the back and forth and the tension and the sheer like confusion about what's going on. And I wanted that for the mom so you just feel heard and seen, because that's kind of how it is. I'm sure your wife, even though she most likely was depressed, she wasn't like moping around 24 hours a day.
No, there was definitely not a lot of moping. It was more just kind of emotional and just kind of feeling out of sorts. And
Yeah.
because it was such a dramatic life change. We were immediately playing zone defense versus, man to man, whatever. I'm really bad with sports analogies.
Friends reference?
What's that?
Yeah, the Friends reference.
Is it a Friends? I'm not so sure. I don't know.
Yeah. They mentioned that in Friends when they're watching the triplets, Phoebe's nephews and nieces.
Oh my God, I totally forgot that whole storyline in Friends. Now I feel like a loser. I should know that as somebody who was a young adult in the 90s.
I'm really obsessed with the show. I've beaten everybody in a trivia game. It's like a point of pride for me.
Well, I know not to go up against you. And
Yep.
if you're talking Columbo, I could probably get you, but not definitely not Friends. I'm just thinking, like listening to you tell the story. It does require a lot of vulnerability. I mean, I think writing in general requires, whether writing fiction or not fiction, authors, writers, we have to be vulnerable, because if we're not going to tell an authentic story. But with you saying, just kind of admitting to, really admitting to the world, like feelings of guilt, feeling like, you're not a full bona fide mother, kind of negative feelings because you shouldn't be feeling what you're feeling, but admitting it, that takes a fair amount of vulnerability. And I'm curious, what has been the reaction to that? And then on the other side, like, how has that been healing for you?
The reaction's been really, really lovely. There's been people who will say, oh my God, if you take out your name and put in my wife's, that's her story. And then there's moms who would say, even like people who are now grandmothers will say, oh my God, if you take out your name and put in mine, that's my story. And no, they're not married to a man named Qasim, and no, they don't live in Scottsdale, and no, they didn't go to this event that's in the book. But like all the feelings are they're just so much more natural than people allow. And so it's really cool that people can see themselves in the story, which was the goal. I just kind of, I don't offer medical advice or anything. I just kind of want to hold your hand and be like, I know it sucks, doesn't it? Isn't it terrible? I totally get you. It's fine. And we'll figure it out. We'll work through it. So, it's been really fun to see that reaction and know that it's actually doing what I wanted it to do.
Yeah. I mean, in that way, like writing, it seems like started off as being very therapeutic for you personally. But it sounds like it's become very therapeutic as well for your readers.
I hope so. And it was therapeutic. Even just recently, I was looking back. I have a talk I'm doing next week. And so I was looking through my book, trying to grab some talking points. And I got really sad. I was reading the chapter, just kind of skimming over the chapter of where I talk about the day you give birth, you get to decide between the red pill or the blue pill, the whole matrix thing. And the blue pill, you'll just like be in bliss in heaven, and you won't know that we're stuck in this matrix. Or you can take the red one and you can see what life is really like and how we've been lied to. And I wrote how I took the red one, and I can't believe I did that, and how I'm just seeing everything so differently, and how I can't allow this to be my reality. And reading reading that and knowing that that's how I really thought, in hindsight, makes me still, he's 7.5, and I can get really sad just thinking I'm going to get choked up. Just thinking about it, because I love him so much. And to think that I ever had those thoughts about him is really, really heartbreaking. So like, I'm okay. But sometimes when you just look back, you think of like, look at all the time that I lost having those, those feelings towards him. Look how like I couldn't connect with him, and I didn't feel like I loved him. And that's just a really, really hard thing to admit. But I don't think I'm very special. And I think if I have had that, then other people have too. And it's such a hard thing to say out loud. So if I could say it out loud for somebody else and sort of give them that permission, then it's worth it to be that vulnerable.
So part of what you're telling me is that you're the Neo of moms.
Oh, oh my God. Where's my trench coat? Oh, that's so cool.
If we could just digress for a moment, because there's a franchise that where the first movie was so good, and then 2 was okay, 3 was not great, and
Did
4,
anybody watch 4?
I did. It was an utter disappointment. And I hate to say it because I think it had such a cool visual look. Just the way he looked in that movie. You know, I can man crush on Keanu Reeves for a moment, but with the long hair and the beard, I'm like, the guy, you know, he was kind of John Wicky.
Yeah.
But man,
I'm so disappointed.
Movie.
I know. It's always really frustrating when they're like, "Oh my God, this makes so much money. Let's jump on that more." And it's not about the story anymore. It's just about, oh, how can we pull in viewers? I hate that.
Yeah. I mean, they could have stopped after 1.
They really could have, and it still would have been so monumental.
Now, I'd feel really bad if you told me that you were actually in, you know, the second or third or fourth ones.
I wrote the 4th one. How dare you?
How dare I? Well, you know, maybe stick to writing books about postpartum. You know, you mentioned you were an actor. Just you want to talk about that for a moment? I mean, I'll get back to the book in a second, but I'm just curious about, you know, how you go from, you know, Miss Arab USA to being a writer to then being an actor.
I was an actor first. I did like, stage and in college and local. And I grew up in St. Louis, so I just did like local theater. And then I moved to Phoenix after college, and this is more of a film town. I mean, there's theater here, but there was a lot more film available to me here than there was in St. Louis. And so I got myself a commercial agent. And so I would do commercial work. She's the best agent. Her name's Ruth, and I think she's been here like 30 years. And then I would do indie films on the side, and most of them were terrible, and I hope you never see them, but it was so much fun. And what I love about it, honestly, I'm like, this is a part of, I just started going to different therapists, and this is actually something I talk about, where like, I really love being another person. I really love diving into somebody else's story and living that life for a short amount of time and trying to like get inside other people's heads and understand why they make the choice that they make. And I think a lot of it's probably because I don't understand humans. So I want to understand, like, why are people like this? So to play a character who's flawed and messed up and annoying, or I don't like her, or whatever, and then try to like not judge her and just be her and try to understand her, I really, really like doing, even if the movies were shit. But it was so much fun. It was so much fun. You'd stay up and you'd watch the sun come up, and because you're just all night making movies. And I don't know, I loved it. I only stopped after I had kids because it was just too hard.
Yeah. So you're telling me I should not put your IMDb link in the show notes?
No, we're going to avoid that.
Well, I will say, just, mentioning that you're from St. Louis, I can't let this slip. 2 things. The great John Hamm, also from St. Louis. He is probably your crown prince of St. Louis when it comes to acting. But B, what is that cheese they put on pizza in St. Louis? Because I heard it's not normal.
Oh yeah, I can't remember the name of the cheese, but we have a franchise there called Emo's Pizza, and we just have our own thing, and it's so good. And people actually like try to get it shipped over here. I've met people that live here that are from there, where you could actually like have it delivered, because it's just so good. It's so good. I don't remember the chese, but it's wonderful.
Yeah, because it's not mozzarella. So my Italian, the half is
offended.
It's offended, and it's questioning the sanity of people in St. Louis. But you seem to.
You're part Italian. We fry ravioli, and we call it toasted ravioli.
Second rally behind a fried ravioli.
It's really good, but I didn't know it was a St. Louis thing. I just thought that was like, doesn't everybody eat that at lunch at school?
Oh no! No. They used to have. I used to go to Bennigan's when I was in high school. We thought we were so cool. We go hang out at Bennigan's and drink root beer because it came in like beer bottles.
Oh yeah.
But they had a toasted ravioli on the menu that was actually quite delicious. I don't think I'd like it now because I'm 48 and not 16 anymore. But I digress. I do always like to have some fun with my guests. And one of the ways I like to do that is through understanding pop culture a little bit more. So what I'm curious about, when you were growing up, Suzanne, what were some of your favorite shows to watch on TV?
What do you call growing up?
Okay, well, let's say when you were a kid, 8 to 12.
Okay, I think I was really into like Captain Planet. I kind of a little bit liked Power Rangers, and I really wanted to be the Yellow Ranger, and I did pretend to be Trina. Um, and Full House and that Cosby Show. Is that what it's called? The Cosby
The
Show?
Cosby Show, sure.
Which makes me sad now.
I know there's a lot of Cosby guilt out there because so many of us grew up like, which
America's
was our,
Dad.
you know?
Yeah, it sucks. But still, the show's good, and you have to give, like, it's still good.
Oh, he was one of my, if not my favorite stand-up, top 3 stand-ups. Yeah, growing up watching Bill Cosby.
Still quote stand up.
Well, I can quote Bill Cosby himself all day long.
So every time I make a cake, I think of him and his whole thing about cake.
Right.
How it's breakfast.
Dad is great. Give us a chocolate cake.
Cake.
And then the kids turn on him.
And my mom used to make us watch. I'd watch like Who's the Boss with her and Mama's Family and Three's Company. Oh, so good.
Did you ever watch what was it? Was it Three's a Crowd, the follow-up show?
No.
Yes, there was a follow-up where Jack and whoever he married, they got married. He opened up a restaurant called Jack's Bistro. And I think like the tension was like his wife's dad moved in with them or something like that. Like, I don't know.
No,
there was definitely a Mr. Furley type character. But yeah, look up Three's a Crowd. I don't think it lasted too long, but it was definitely a thing.
It's that whole sequel business that we talked about earlier with The Matrix.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It wasn't. It didn't strike fire like Happy Days spun off like 3 other shows. So did was it All in the Family spun off a couple of shows too, but that were successful. But yeah, not so much for Three's Company or Three's a Crowd.
Spin off.
Happy Days spun off.
The Charlie.
No, the Vernon Shirley, and Mork and Mindy.
No way. Those are Happy Days spinoffs?
And there could have been a 3rd spinoff from Happy Days, but yeah, Mork and Mindy definitely. Because Mork from Mork appeared in Happy Days a couple of times. And then Laverne and Shirley, definitely. And there could be one more that I'm forgetting. Oh, Joni Loves Chachi. But that wasn't too popular.
Oh, really? I felt like it was.
Joni Loves Chachi? Maybe. I don't know how long it lasted.
I don't know. I only caught it here and there on TV land.
There you go. Any obviously Friends when you were a little bit older. Any other, like when you were older, any other shows that like you couldn't not watch?
I watched a shit ton of Friends, man. I'm trying to think. What else did I watch? I watched a lot of Harry Potter. I'm a big Potterhead. Big time. It's in my book. I talk about it. It's a thing. Oh my gosh, what else? What did your kids watch? Your kids are way younger. What did you watch?
All right, so to really date me, I have a twin brother. We were addicted to shows like Chips, Emergency. Gosh, we would watch Love Boat.
The Love Boat.
That's right. We made another run. We used to play Love Boat.
Don't ask. Fun.
Don't ask. What else? And then Happy Days, Dallas, we used to stay up late for because we loved the theme song to it. I mean, we were definitely children of the 80s. Like that was, we were
embarrassing.
Sure.
I have watched General Hospital my entire life. My aunts and grandmother, my grandmother doesn't speak English. So my aunts and my grandmother and my mom, we'd all like be watching it. And I was little. And my grandmother would always be like, what are they saying? What's happening? And she'd be really interested, even though we had to translate everything. And it sort of just became this thing. Like this is what you do. And now I do it because it's how I connect with my sister. And she has a disability. And so for her, like her whole life revolves around GH. And so like, I still watch it. And then we get on the phone. We're like, oh my God, can you believe what happened? And it's just sort of become like just tradition for us.
It's nothing to be embarrassed about. I watched Guiding Light regularly because my grandmother lived with us. So like I feel like through high school, I'd come from school, and if I didn't have like practice or like a rehearsal or something, I'd be sitting there in front of the TV watching the CBS soaps, Guiding
Okay.
Light. I could tell you, Philip and Alan Michael Spalding and anything going on, in the Spalding universe was fair game. You want to hear an embarrassing story? So when my grandmother, when I was really young, so old Italian grandmother, right? They do things unconventionally. So she would sit in front of the TV and she would get a bucket. And she would shave her legs like in front of
No
the TV.
way.
And to God. And to God, she gets up to go to the bathroom, comes back to find me shaving my legs. And she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It's like we're watching the soaps."
This is what you do when you watch the soaps.
And I'm like, I thought we were bonding here, Grandma. Now go toast me some ravioli. All right, enough about me.
Oh my God, I love that.
What about music? What did you listen to growing up?
Oh my God. So I like at home we listen to a lot of Arabic music. And then I grew up with a bunch of emo kids, but like pop emo. So I was like,
Nothing to do with emo pizza.
no, that's emos.
Oh, sorry. There's
Like punk rock stuff. So
yeah.
it'd be like Fall Out Boy and Breaking Benjamin and Panic at the Disco and The Used, Taking Back Sunday, Blink 182. Like those were my people. But my dad taught me classical music, Frank Sinatra. I know everything there is to know about the Beatles because it was a ritual every Sunday. We listened to the Beatles for an hour and then he would tell me, "Did you know things? Did you know?" And then he would just tell me all sorts of things about Ringo. And so yeah, I felt like it was like kind of well-rounded, but I was definitely in line with the emo kids at school. So that's what I did.
Did you watch that 9-hour documentary on the Beatles?
No.
It was on Apple TV. Yeah, it was Peter Jackson found like, I don't know how many hundreds of hours of footage that he cut down to 9 leading up to, the big concert they did like on the rooftop during an album release. I'm going to really butcher this. But if you're a Beatles fan or maybe your dad, give him a heads up about it. It's really good. It's interesting.
Apple TV?
Apple, I'm pretty sure it's Apple. It's either Apple TV or Disney. It's one of the two.
Okay.
You'll see Yoko knitting a lot. She's in it knitting for some reason, not adding any other value to what's going on around her. Like Paul's composing "Let It Be" and Yoko's like knitting a sweater. It's kind of funny, but not really.
Shows you how powerful one person can be.
Yes. What lessons did you learn the hard way when going through the publishing process for this book?
That I am not a Kardashian. Because if you're not a Kardashian, people don't give a shit about you. It doesn't matter that you have a better story to tell. And it's just a really weird world that we live in, the whole like celebrity status business. So, and what I really learned is that I made, you kind of get imposter syndrome, Mike. It just, you're like, oh, I have a story, but it's my story. So you're like, why would you care? And I have to remember that I try to remind myself that it's so much bigger because I'm trying to connect with other moms who are struggling. And somebody told me like a couple weeks ago, she goes, "I'm in the middle of postpartum right now." It's just somebody who found me on Instagram. And she was like, "And I know that when I come out of it, I'm going to be able to attribute a lot of that to this book." And I'm like, oh my God, people actually they're actually feeling it. And that's so, it makes you want to it humbles you, but then you're also like, wow, I did a thing. And you just feel really, really proud. But when you're trying to publish it, you don't feel that way. You just feel so small and kind of worthless. So I did all of it on my own. I went to 99 Designs and I found somebody who could make the book cover. And I found a guy on Reedsy that formats it. And anyway, I just kind of figured it out and I stumbled through it. But now for my next book, I'm, I'll know what to do and it'll be a lot easier. But just the process of realizing how unimportant you could feel during all of that is humbling.
It's humbling, and there's a fair amount of persistence required. Especially if you're trying to find the agent and go the super traditional route, because I could literally wallpaper my office with I could replace these corks with rejection letters, from agencies and agents, and They all
Yeah.
say the same thing. And every once in a while you get one that says, hey, I really like what you said. You know, it's somewhat more personalized. And that's like a win. You know, it's sad, but that's like a win when you get like a personalized rejection.
But then I'm super skeptical. I'm like, but did they mean it? And then I just don't believe that they even liked it.
There's your imposter syndrome coming back to
Oh,
haunt
big time. Big time.
you. But it's true. I mean, most authors, even, you know, I talk to authors who sold 40 million books. They feel the same way with each book. You know, there's something about it that just never goes away.
There's just such a, to your point earlier, such a level of vulnerability. It's so personal. It's like, hey, I made this art. Do you like it? And you're seeking the approval of other people. That makes you just feel so exposed, especially if it's something like a memoir where it's super personal and I'm giving you like just oh, here's a fight, a real legitimate fight that my husband and I had, where he said, do you want to just leave for a year, take some money and go, and I'll take care of the baby, I'll hire someone, do you want to just go? Like, I put that in the book, and that's the really, really private, personal thing. And now I'm like, do you resonate with it? Do you like it? You know, and that's so ugh.
Yeah, but it's striking a chord with so many people.
I hope so. Yeah.
Lastly, if you could write a letter to the younger Suzanne, you know, maybe it's, you know, the Suzanne who's just a new mom. You could pick whatever, you know, age you want to be, but what are some words of advice you would tell her?
Not to take things so seriously. I've calmed down a little bit in this idea, but I just think that I've always taken things really seriously. I'm the eldest child of immigrants, like I said, so there was just a lot of responsibility on my shoulders, you know, to help around the house and with the kids, and I just felt like everything I did was judged and looked at, and if I did something wrong, people would look badly at my sisters too, and so I just felt all this pressure to never ever enjoy myself and play. And if I could get my younger child to just play more and realize the importance of, you know, laughter and giggling and enjoying life and playing and kind of that inner child thing that we all seek. I wish she had that. I really, really wish she had that.
Yeah, it's like we all have inner children. We all have to feed those inner children, but it sounds like you almost, like when you were literally a child, you were taking life a little seriously.
Yeah, I never got to play, so I can't access her now because she just like there's no mechanism from like, oh, I'm gonna pull out old Suze. Like, no, old playful Suze didn't exist. So it's now I'm trying to learn how to access that. It's weird.
Right. You may or may not be able to find that at Disney World.
I was there in December. I did not find it. I found a cranky old lady who just did not want to be there. Oh, so many people in the lines, and it's wildly unnecessary, and it's stupid expense. No, I'm angry. I'm angry just thinking about it.
It's like happiest place on earth, my ass. You know, it's
God. Honestly, get rid of all the people, and maybe it'll be the happiest place on earth.
it could be. You never know. You never know. Well, listen, this has been a fun conversation, Suzanne. Your book is called Postpartum Me. And where can people buy it?
Oh, well, there's lots of local places here in Phoenix, but for those of you elsewhere, it's on Amazon.
All right, Amazon.com, or go fly out to Phoenix.
Fly out to Phoenix.
And go to some local bookshops, likely in Scottsdale.
Yep, with all the resorts. You'll be very happy here.
Suzanne, if people want to follow you on social media or visit a website, do you have anything you can share with us?
I'm the most active on Instagram. It's Suzanne Yatim Aslam.
All right, there you go. And we will not direct anyone to your IMDb. Is that correct?
Just want to torture me a little bit. That's fine.
Oh, you know, come on. We like to have fun here on Uncorking a Story. Well, this has been a fun conversation, Suzanne. Thank you for letting me uncork your story.
Thank you. It was fun talking to you.
Thanks for listening to Uncorking a Story. If you'd like more information about today's guest or to find out more about Mike, go to uncorkingastory.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in every week to hear Mike Carlin uncork a new story.